Hello, everybody, and welcome to Athletic Definition. My name is Coach Ray, and today my guest is Josh Laker. Thank you for being my guest today, Josh. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
No problem, and welcome to Fireside. It's a fairly new app, but there's a lot of great features, and right now it is like my responsibility to bring on different fitness people on here and kind of give the world a taste of different activities they can do. My whole thing is I want people to work out, and for some people it may be running, for some people it may be weights or any other sort of activity. And just looking at your bio, it's very impressive. First of all, and I always like to just start off by finding out if, as a little kid, were you active? Was it something that your parents encouraged you to do, or did you not really play outside?
No, yeah, we were outside all the time. My brother, my sister, and I were outside all the time. I played everything from baseball as a little kid, but I played mostly basketball growing up. I did do a little bit of cross country and track when I was in middle school, but mostly basketball. And then when we rode dirt bikes. We went fishing all the time. We spent tons of time on the water. Yeah, we were outside and active a lot. Absolutely.
And then in high school, did you also play sports? And as a little kid, I feel that most of us have dreams of playing some sort of pro sport. Did you want to do anything like that when you were in high school, or did you kind of realize that's a different type of breed of a athlete right there?
Yeah, no, I knew. I mean, I played. I focused on basketball from the junior high up to high school. I wasn't any good. I mean, I was on a team every year, but all the way up until I think my junior year, I played on the JV team, and then my senior year, you couldn't play JV anymore. So I kind of just sat on the varsity bench and watched the game unfold. And it wasn't until my senior year that I really knew what I wanted to do, and it was to coach. At that time, it was basketball. Like I really wanted to coach basketball, and from the bench, I was called the coach from all my other coaches because I was always hollering at other players, telling them to get in position or rebound or whatever it was. So for the longest time, coaching basketball is something that I wanted to do.
Oh wow, that's interesting. I've had a lot of people when I would play basketball and directly call me the coach as well, because I'd always be like, "Come on, get back on D. Let's do this. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's try and make it happen." Or just encourage the team if we're down. And then I saw you decided to join the military. And was that before college or?
Yeah. So I actually joined the Coast Guard. It's called the Delayed Entry Program between my junior and my senior year of high school. So I was actually technically in the Coast Guard when I was in high school. And then 2 months out after I graduated high school, I went straight to boot camp. So I was in boot camp when I was 18 and been in the Coast Guard ever since. Matter of fact, I just hit 20 years last month.
Wow. Well, congratulations and thank you for your
Thanks.
service. I'm not a giant military buff, but I believe you have the power to arrest people versus the other branches.
No, the Coast Guard. Yeah, yeah. We have. I forget what it's called now that you said it, but yeah, the Coast Guard has is the only law enforcement, only military branch that can affect laws on the U.S. land, on U.S. territories when we're not in in a state of war.
And then just from your bio, it said you went to Hawaii. And out of all the
Mhm.
places you want to get stationed, I'm sure a lot of people want to go to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And how was that experience? And also, you mentioned that that's really when you fell in love with running, which people that I know have gone there, done races, lived there, say it's very humid. And
Yeah. Yeah. So Hawaii was great. So I was there from 2008 to 2011, and it was beautiful, of course. But when I was ready, when it was time for us to leave, it was long enough. You can only go around the island so much and see all the things. But I mean, it was absolutely beautiful out there. Now, I grew up in the Midwest, and that's where I'm living right now. It's way more humid here in the Midwest
Mm.
than it ever was in Hawaii. You could, the house that we lived in didn't have any air conditioner. You open up the window and there's enough breeze that you'd be okay. It may get kind of hot on some nights, but it was never miserable. So I mean, it was always even keel temperatures out in Hawaii, and it was absolutely beautiful out there.
And is it because of the beauty that you started running and fell in love more with running, or what was it at that point? Because for me, a long time it was just always love hate between running, and then at
Yeah.
some point it just became love.
Yeah, I mean, my story is kind of weird. So I did run a little bit when I was in, junior high and high school, but not a lot. I mostly did it just to stay in shape for basketball. And then when I got to Hawaii, so that would have been 7 years after I've been in the Coast Guard. I wasn't unfit. I was really scrawny. I wasn't overweight, but I just wasn't fit. And I went back home, back to, what was it? I was in Kentucky at the time for some training. And I went and go visit my brother. I sat down at a table outside of his restaurant that he was working at the time, had a big old burger and a big tall beer in front of me, talking to one of his friends. And he was just telling me how he just finished a marathon, and this guy was much heavier than I was, uh, appeared to be more out of shape than I was, and he just finished running 26.2 miles. And he told me about like the low percentage of people in the U.S. that have run a marathon, and it just totally piqued my interest on like, well, if he can do it, I want to do it. I want to do it, and I want to try to train for that. And that's really where it all started. I started doing my research. I'm that type of guy when I want to buy something, when I want to try something new, I do a ton of research on it. And I just started diving really deep into how to run, how to do it effectively, how to do it without injury. And I started training for my first half marathon.
That's really good. I don't think most people take that effect. Unfortunately, there's a lot of running injuries, and if
Yeah.
people were to educate themselves before, a lot of people just want to go kind of gun ho. I'm guilty of that when I started. I didn't know any better. Just let's see what happens, and people would tell me something. You're not supposed to do that, or you can't do that, and I'd be like, watch me,
Yeah,
and
let me
then
show you.
yeah, let me
Yeah.
show you, and then well,
Yeah.
I've done this many. Watch me again, and but then after a while, you kind of I I want to learn like the more effective ways of doing it. I'm not the best. There's people who are better than me that I could learn from, and that's the mentality I've taken. Uh, I I think for a while, a lot of the thing is a lot of people are just kind of like about the book, but maybe haven't experienced it. And I was more about let me go experience it, and then I'll go into the books. Um, and I know with your interest in learning everything, is that why you decided to go back to school and pursue? Because you went all out. You got a bachelor's and a master's.
Yeah.
A bachelor's in what is it?
A
Exercise.
bachelor's in exercise science, and then so yeah, I mean, I started there when I was living out in Hawaii. I started pursuing my bachelor's in exercise science, just to dive a bit more into. I mean, it was really about the biomechanics of running, the exercise nutrition, and all the things that come along with the body, the how your body adapts to stress and workouts and recovery and all those things. And so I started doing some extra studies in exercise science, and I got my bachelor's when I lived out in. Actually, I started it in Hawaii, and then I finished it when I moved out to North Carolina. And then right after that, I joined a master's program and got a master's degree in human performance, where I studied more about way more in depth on biomechanics of exercise, nutrition of exercise, and it was just a really cool program.
And I also see you're certified in the U.S. Track and Field Level One
Mm.
and Two. I got the Level One, and I just recently took the RRCA course,
Yep.
Roadrunner Club, and I could be wrong, but one of the guys who taught it was a level three, and I thought he mentioned there's only three people in the U.S. that are certified to teach level three, which I thought was pretty a small amount of people. So, is it a small percentage that go on to the level two as well that you're aware?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more. Obviously, there's more in the level two than our level three. Level two, in order to get level two, you have to do some coaching for a certain period of time. Have your level one, and then do some coaching for a certain period of time before you go take the level two course. And so that I was able to do that. I did some volunteer coaching at a junior Olympic team. I did some volunteer coaching at Marshall University when I lived out in West Virginia, and so that was able to get me into the level two course.
And since it was a U.S. track and field, was there like a different event besides running that you were into, or what were you primarily coaching?
Yeah, I mean, it was all running. And then, I specialized. Level two, you can specialize into the type of field you want to learn. So, level one, as you know, they talk about everything. They talk about throws, they talk about sprints, a little bit about endurance. But level two, they have a specific throws course. They have a specific course for endurance, which is the one that I took.
Got you. And just for anyone listening in, I already, if you see on the fortune cookie, I have Josh's Instagram and his website. And then later on, I'll give you the opportunity to mention how people can reach out to you. But that's just another hyperlinks that are very convenient as well. And for those of you just joining in, Josh Laker is my guest. He's an ultra runner, active duty coach. And I know you coach. What do you prefer to coach? Since you do ultras, is it mostly adults? Because it seems like you young people, maybe in their 20s, aren't really doing it too much. Maybe it's grown a little bit, but it seems like an older crowd that seems to be doing ultras.
Yeah, I mean, my primary client is an ultra athlete, and it is. It's probably I've had a couple upper 20-year olds, but that's probably the oldest athlete I've had, and I've coached a handful of 50-year olds as well. So the ultra scene is definitely a range of ages, but that's what's so cool about it is you don't anyone can honestly run an ultra. Like anyone can run a half marathon, anyone can run a marathon as well. But running, being able to run, there's this mystique about running beyond a marathon. And people think they had to have to put in tons and tons of miles, tons of time to run, 50K, 50 mile, 100 miles. And honestly, you don't. It takes a different type of training. It takes some intentionality with planning your life around training, but it's not this, superhuman thing that takes tons and tons of time to do.
And that's coming from a guy who I see you have kids and they're
Mhm.
in sports, and I'm
Yeah.
assuming you work full time. So
Yeah.
when you say time, you know, to the average person who's considering it, how much time out of their week would you say they need to put out to try and do something like this?
I've trained athletes to run a 50K on 3 to 4 days a week, where we max out at 40 miles a week for their peak week, and up to 100-mile training plan where we're running 5 days a week. I don't like to train people more than 5 days a week. I don't think it's needed. There's like you said, injury is rampant in running. I'm all about longevity. I love to run. I want to coach runners who love to run. I want to coach them in a way that they'd be able to do it for the rest of their life, not just run this 100-mile race and then be done. So, I don't like going super hard in training and getting them to this race beat up and battered just to get through it. So 5 miles, 5 days a week is typically the max for any one of my athletes, and depending on the athlete, anywhere from 40 miles to 60 miles max for their peak week when we're talking about 100-mile training plan.
And I want to go backwards a little bit. I know you said you heard, I think, like your brother's friend or somebody
Mhm.
talking. who completed a marathon, and then it piqued your interest and you started running. How long were you running when you found out about what an ultra is, and then, oh, I want to do an ultra from the time you started running?
So that was when I was at that table with my brother's friend. It was probably 2011, and so I ran my first half marathon that year in 2011. I ran my first marathon in either 2011 or 2012, and then ran a handful of marathons from 2012 to 2015, and then in 2016 was when I moved out to West Virginia. I moved out to actually, I was in St. Louis, Missouri at the time. And that's when I set my sights on a 50 miler. And that I really haven't looked back since. Once I found trail running, once I found the ultra distance events, well, I didn't look back. I've done one marathon since then just because I wanted to qualify for Boston. But other than that, I've done everything, 50K and above.
Did you get to qualify for Boston?
I did. It was the most painful thing I've ever done too. It was miserable. It was 2018, I think it was. 2017, I decided, all right, I want to go back. My PR at the time was 3 hours and 21 minutes at the Little Rock Marathon. And I had to run a 3:05, and I wanted to train for a 2:55. And, being do as I say, not as I do. I wasn't ready for a 2:55, and I trained for a 2:55. I should have trained for, probably a 3:02, and I would have been in better shape at the race. But I ended up running a 3:04:39, which got me to qualify. But that year, you had to run a minute and 20 seconds ahead, faster than your qualifying time to get in. So I qualified, but I didn't get into Boston.
Got it. And for some people, they just want to qualify, and some people actually want to go and do the races. Do you actually want to go and do the race, or are you just satisfied
No,
with qualifying?
yeah, I'm satisfied with qualifying. I'm a little unsatisfied with not being able to run under three. So there's a part of me that wants to train again and run a 2:59, but we'll see. I'd rather run 200 miles before I run a 2:59. So
And so, what is the longest distance you've done in an ultra?
150.
150, and
Yeah.
was that within how many days did you have to
So
complete that?
that was 36 hours. That was a last man standing race. I just did that in May of this year, and the idea behind that race is if you take 100 miles and you divide it by 24 hours, you get 4.1667 miles on every hour. And so they developed a race where you start the race at 7 o'clock in the morning, and you have 1 hour to run 4.1667 miles. And if you get done in 40 minutes, you rest for 20 until the next hour, and you do it over again. Whoever makes it back in time or whoever doesn't make it back in time is out. They don't get to go again. And you just keep going and going and going until you're the last person left. And the race that I was in, it came down to me and one other guy for the last four loops, maybe the last three loops. And then Paul, who was the second place finisher, he couldn't go anymore. His feet were just tore up. He had duct taped his feet. He had toenails falling off. He had blisters all over the place, and he had to bow out. And so I ran the last lap by myself to finish the race. And that's it. I couldn't go any farther. They wouldn't let me go any farther because that's how the race goes.
Wow, 150 miles. That's very impressive. And oh wow, if that is so difficult when you duct tape your feet just to have to give
Yeah,
up.
he was something else. He was a really great guy too.
And then, on your bio, it says you've done at least three 100-mile races.
Yep.
And in that picture, have you won a couple of them, or
Well, so that's the one I won, the last man
okay?
standing.
And what exactly kind of a trophy is that?
That was a plaque of that was the state of Kentucky. So the race was in Kentucky, and so that was just the state of Kentucky. I think it was made out of bourbon barrel wood or something like that. It has some curvature to it.
Got it. And if anyone is wondering what the picture looks like, you can go to Athletic Definition Instagram and you can see the picture of Josh's trophy. I was trying to zoom in and take a look at it, what it is, and that makes sense now. It's the outline of the
Yeah,
state. So,
yeah.
okay. And then the other ones, how were they? How was that experience?
So my very first 100 miler was probably the hardest one I've done. It was out in the mountains of Virginia, and it was MMT Massanutten Mountain 100, and it ended up being 104 miles, 20,000 feet of climbing. It took me about 20, just under 25, just over 25 hours to finish, and I finished 15th place in that, which was respectable, and I had no clue what I was doing at the time. So I did that one in it was May of 2017 or 18, I think, and then a couple months later, I did the Yeti 100, which is the exact opposite of MMT. It was like an out and back course that only had like 2,000 feet of climbing. It was all on crushed limestone, and ended up finishing second in that race. And I finished in 17 hours and 15 minutes. So, it's yin and yang, two different courses, but both 100-mile races.
Wow, that sounds like a always a fun experience. And have you had that hallucination where ultra runners talk about?
No, no, no. So the craziest thing was during the last race I just did, where I was going for 36 hours. You don't have time to sleep. I was able to sleep during the night course for about 5 minutes every lap. Every other lap or something like that. So over the course of the 36 hours, I maybe had an hour of sleep, and I never hallucinated, but I've never been to a point to where I've been that tired during the middle of a day moving. So if I was running, I was fine, but the second I stopped running and started like power hiking up a hill, like my eyes wouldn't focus. I couldn't, you know, see. I could see where I was going, but I couldn't focus on the trail in front of me, and I almost couldn't keep my eyes open in the middle of the day. And so that's probably the closest to hallucinating I've ever had, was just being extremely tired in the middle of a day.
So pretty much in all the races you've done, you've never slept at all. At all.
No, other than the last man standing, that's the only time that we really had a system in place to where, like, I had earplugs to put in, I had a blanket to wear, I had a face mask, and we had like a chair that leaned back to where I can lay down in. That's the only race I've been in where I've really needed to sleep.
And I've done a I've done a marathon in the mountains,
Yeah.
which they had an ultra also as well. And the support crews are way different. Even
Oh yeah.
the food that they give you, and
Yeah.
just so nice. It was quite the experience compared to a regular road race that I've had. It's like Coca Cola and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and can I put ice in your bag?
Yeah.
It's a really good experience for no one who's ever tried it. I highly recommend it. Uh, I mean, I still haven't done an ultra, but the trail races they're so nice, and you're just with nature. And I never put on music when I'm out there just running. I'm just enjoying the sounds of the mountains and the runners.
Yeah, and it is. It's a world of difference between running on the road and running, on a trail. The community is different. Not saying that the road runners community is bad, but when I moved to the trail running and ultra running, so many more conversations have been had on the trail than I've ever had running on the road with somebody. And I mean, one, you're going at a lower effort, and you can actually talk, and you're out there for way longer. So you spark up conversations with random people. I remember November of last year, I did the Georgia Death Race, and I was severely undertrained for it because of circumstances with COVID and all that. But I was out there and I started hurting early. And later in that race, I just happened to come across a guy who was not doing well either. And we both kind of just ran together. I think it was probably the last 20, 25 miles of the race where we did a walk run and we kind of just pushed each other, talked to each other the whole time, and we helped each other through it.
Yeah, that's great. The random connections you make
Yeah.
during a race and just kind of give you that little extra push you need sometimes. Um, I wanted to ask, since I know you were a big basketball fan, do you still get to play basketball now, or that's something you just kind of hung up the basketball shorts?
Yeah, I just hung them up. I play randomly in the driveway, but actually, probably the last time I played a real game of basketball was last year at um, some random family event that I was having. We just broke up the basketball and played an event. But you know, it's kind of scary to think about it now that if I try to go play basketball, I could, roll an ankle or land on someone's ankle when I come down, and someone's foot when I come down from a rebound, and be out for a couple months because of that. So it's one of those things. It's the cons definitely outweigh the pros of playing any kind of basketball game now.
And what about races? What do you have coming up next? Are you training for anything particular?
I'm just starting to get back into training. I'm just kind of ramping up my miles now. I really, I took a ton of time off after my race in May. Really, I don't like running during the summer as it is. I sweat a ton. It's just too hot. I don't enjoy it. I ran still. There's a lot of unfocused running, but I'm just now starting to ramp up my training because I have some plans next year to where I want to qualify for one of the main races. It's called the Big Dogs Backyard Ultra, where it's the guy who created that race I was just talking about, the 4.167 miles. He
Hmm.
created that race. The guy's name is Lazarus Lake, and he created this whole thing. There's all these the backyard ultras happen all over the world, and now there's this championship system to where if you finish well in one of the races or you win them, you automatically get into the championship race, which happens every October. So that's my goal next year is to get into a race in March that happens in Ohio that usually has really good competition there. That if I win that race, I automatically get into the race in October. So that's my plan. I got to try to sign up for that race here in about 2 weeks.
Got it. And is it usually just only for the winner of the race, or does second place get an entry as well?
So the winner automatic gets the automatic bid, and then they have a system to where they do an at-large bid. So if you end up going enough miles, so for example, I'm needed to run about 220, 230 miles at my race this year to get an at-large bid. And since I only was able to run 150, I didn't get that at-large bid. So if you go far enough, if you have enough competition to push the pace far enough, then you don't have to win. You can get in at large bid.
Got it. And I'm glad you mentioned the weather. I know a lot of people either they hate the cold or they hate the heat, and they think that you probably have to train for everything. I personally do, because there was times when I didn't train for all types of weather, and not that I prefer to run in the heat than the cold. That's
Oh
just
yeah,
me. But there was a time where I would avoid the cold so much and the rain, and then a race I was doing, it started raining, and I'm like, I am not prepared for this at all. So now when it rains, I put on like, hey, you're a little kid, go out and enjoy a run in the
yeah,
rain. I
yeah.
put on that mentality and I go out for a run, just because it needs to get done here and there. Not always, but it does. I think it's important, especially because you don't know what race conditions will be that day. And you lived in quite a few different states. You
Yep.
were talking about humidity. So what do you do to like get yourself motivated when the temperatures are like hot, or do you just do a lot of cross training? Because I also see you in the weight room all the time as well.
Well, for me, I mean, everyone's motivated by a different thing. But for me, if I don't have a race on the calendar, it's my motivation is a bit different. I, it's harder to get out that door when it's 90 degrees out. But if I have a race on the calendar, I'll train in any conditions. And I'll just have to, make changes to how I train. When I was during, let's see, it was 20, it must have been 28, the summer of 2018 going into 2019, I was training through the summer. And, it was the dead of summer, and I had to get in 20, 30 mile long runs, and me and a buddy would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get half of our long run done before it got too hot, and the other half we would just do loops around our car so we could stop and get enough water, enough electrolytes, enough food, so we didn't get too dehydrated.
And actually, a runner sent me a link today, and it was about, I think it's a real short study that they're trying to do in ultra runners, and you were talking about the percentages of people that do marathons, which is really small. So the percentages of ultra runners is even smaller.
Mhm.
Um, do you think that? I think what the article was trying to say is that you could be too fit for your own good. That maybe you can push it, and they were trying to see if there was any sort of heart issues that would basically I guess, arise from ultra runners. I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing. They sent it to me today, but it reminded me of a TED talk I seen a few years ago where they talk about, geez, his name, the guy that the marathon was created, named after, who ran from in Greece and ran to
Oh,
marathon.
flip it. Like, yeah, I can't think of his name either now.
And basically, what the TED talk was trying to say that he was kind of like the first endurance athlete of that time. And
Mhm.
what most people don't know is that he died right after he
Yeah.
delivered that. And they were trying to say that before that, he had probably ran way more than 26 miles. He had probably done like 100, maybe
Mhm.
200 miles. But I'm sure they didn't have gels back then and all the stuff that we have now. So it's kind of an interesting article, and I definitely want to read it more because, like, who are these? Since they're so small, percentage of people doing it, who are these people that they're testing, and do you would you consider an ultra runner maybe like a fitness obsessive kind of fanatic maybe?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I would think anybody who's, I mean, I've talked to many runners. As a coach, I talk to, a new runner every week, probably looking for coaching, and we all come to running for many different reasons. But most of the people I talk to have a drive, have a goal to run, faster pace or a longer distance, and it takes a certain type of person to want to do that. And it's that type of that type of person is someone who's going to be a little bit obsessive, 100%. But just to carry on that point a little bit, it's fine to be obsessive, right? But we also have to understand that if you want to continue to do that, if you want to continue to chase those goals, if you want to continue to run, you can't just run. There's so many other things you have to do to be able to run the rest of your life. The dynamic warm ups, the static stretching, the yoga, the foam rolling, the hot baths, the strength training, taking time away from running so you can continue to run. Those are all things you have to do to continue to run, and that's the difference between being obsessive with running and just running, and being healthy obsessive.
Right, doing it properly, because
Mhm.
there's that overtraining where people can get hurt. They're just so obsessed, and they don't even have like a race that they're preparing for. They just feel that they have to go all the time.
Got to log the miles.
Yeah, and if it's done right, you can see examples like Tom Brady. Uh, it looks like he could play till he's 50 years old, and there's a difference between being obsessed and to be great like that. You kind of do have to be a little bit on the obsessive side, uh, but to complete a marathon or an ultra, I don't feel you have to be. It's just that most people, I think, mentally doubt it when they hear that. It seems, and then some people just don't want to do it. I have friends who are like, I don't even want to walk a mile.
Yeah.
And what's your advice for families? Because I know with kids, my kids are grown. and I don't have to like take them to games or anything like that. And how do you do it? Because I know, man, you have three boys right now.
There's four in the household. Yeah, two.
Four,
Yeah, two are mine and two are my girlfriends from ages 13 to 5.
and all different sports are playing.
Yeah, we got two of them in cross country, one in baseball, and the other one's in between sports right now. But I mean, to answer your question, is I listen. I talked to a prospective client the other day he's got two kids. He's got a job and he's starting his master's program. He's like, listen, I don't know if I have the time, but you're never going to have the time. The only right time to start training for your goal is right now. You can find the time for anything. You can make anything work. And when it comes to your family, like you have to have buy-in from your significant other, from your family. They have to know your goals. They have to know why you want to do these things. You have to know why. You can't just want to run 100 miles just because it looks fun. You're not going to get far if that's the case. It's hard to run 100 miles. It takes a lot of work, and to have a good reason for doing it, you're going to need that. You're going to have to rely on that during training. You're going to have to rely on that during the race, and your family needs to know that so they can support you during the training, because they're going to pick up some of your slack. You're going to be running for 4, 5, 6 hours during training. They're going to have to pick up the slack when you're gone.
Yes, and having someone supportive is definitely helpful. And I'm glad you have that, because
And
I know
so am
there
I.
was,
Absolutely.
yeah, there was times where I've had good relationships and bad relationships, and supportive and non, and there is a big difference. And especially if you're getting ready for a race, the less stress you have and the more smooth everything goes, it makes it better. And that's probably another thing that people in general don't even consider is the communication with their family about what they want to do and the training and the dedication and time that they will probably have to spend away. I always tell them there's going to be times where you're going to be like, oh, I could be hanging out with my friends this weekend, or I could be hanging out with my boyfriend or girlfriend doing something, but I need to get this done first, and then I can hang out with them. And I know you said you like to do the ultra runners that kind of want to finish. Are you able to? Do you coach like someone who's never ran all the way to an ultra, or you just
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
people who just have done races already?
No, I've coached every type of athlete. I've coached athletes who are looking to just get fit. I've coached athletes who are trying to run their first marathon. I've coached multiple athletes who want to run their first ultra, and athletes who want to run their next ultra faster. My specialty is ultra running, but I've coached them all, and I still coach them all. I get all types of athletes that reach out to me with questions, and I have calls with lots of potential clients of all types. But I would say my primary client is the type of an ultra runner, someone who's looking to either eventually get to an ultra, or they have a race in mind that they want to be trained for. Matter of fact, I'm training an Ironman athlete right now.
Oh, that's actually a good one, because I figure with the Coast Guard, your swimming must be pretty good.
No, I hate swimming. I really hate
Oh,
swimming.
okay. So, have you ever dipped into the whole tries at all?
No,
No.
no. There's part of me in the back of my mind that wants to check that box, and honestly, I'd probably do it in my backyard. Like I wouldn't sign up for the race. I would, train to swim, bike, and run, and I would just do it in my neighborhood and just get it done.
Yeah, that's something that part of me wants to do it, but I don't know if I could sit on a bike for however many miles it is. That
Yeah,
seems pretty painful to me.
yeah.
And yeah, uh, any other like sports that you've would like to do that maybe you're kind of in the back of your head, or
Um,
competitions?
Yeah, I mean, there's all different types of running competitions now that are popping up. Like there's those, point to point 200-mile races that
Yeah.
are somewhat intriguing to me. This new type of race format is extremely intriguing to me. Where I'm running, every hour on the hour. I'm thinking about putting on a race here locally. That's kind of a new format where instead of it's still going to be 4.167 miles, but instead of every hour on the hour, every every new hour we knock off 1 minute. So the next hour you have 49 or 59 minutes, and then 58, and until you get down, you know you're going to be running 40, 50, 60 miles and trying to get faster at the same time, which is kind of intriguing to me. It's a different kind of pain.
It is, and it'll probably also shorten the race too, because
Yeah,
with you just trying to each time you go around, that's more pressure to I got to get
yeah,
it done.
yeah,
Very, very interesting, and with COVID and everything else, I'm sure coaching had to have changed. So, are you doing just
absolutely.
in person coaching, online coaching? Do you do both, or?
Yeah, most of my coaching has always been actually all of my coaching has always been online. Being in the military, it's the really the only way I could have done it when I started this business in 2016, officially, anyways. Now that I live in Louisville, Kentucky now. I'm not going to move again. I'm going to stay in the Coast Guard for as long as I can here, and when it's time to move, I'm probably going to be done and go to coaching full time. But now that I'm here, I'm starting to kind of put my roots in, and I'm taking over a volunteer position at a local elementary school to do their cross country. I'm starting a youth program here shortly with in the area that I live in. So I'm starting to get into the in person coaching with the youth, which is something that I've always wanted to do because I like to be able to be around runners that really enjoy running, and doing it with the youth. I'm able to, in my opinion, I'm able to put them in a position to do well the rest of their life with running. Not in competition, but just to be able to run for the rest of their life. That is something that I would love to do.
Yeah, for me, it takes a special type of coach to be able to work with kids and to be able to be patient and translate, so
Yeah,
they can understand. Me, I like teenagers and up. I I'm sure I'm good with the kids, but I just don't really try it. It's just not my thing. Just even coaching other different type of sports, I but my friend, he's really good. I have a couple of friends that are really good with kids. The kids come around them and they connect.
yeah,
And I'm like, yeah, it's in them, and I know how to stay in my lane. So that's great that there's different types of coaches, because
yeah,
the, there's not too many. I think for especially at least that I've seen in at least in California, where I'm from, things for young people to run and kind of get involved. Like in it's usually not till you're like in junior high that you get like your first access to track, and even then where I went, it wasn't really big. It was more until I got into high school that I was more exposed to them. And then by that time, if you're dealing with kids with talent, you're just too behind to kind of
yeah.
catch up. Yeah, it's a short window, and some people are born with that natural speed as well. Um, and so after you say when it's over, you're planning to kind of stay in Kentucky, or?
Yeah, yeah, we're extremely happy where we are. I don't think we're gonna move again until the kids are done and gone. And so, my plan is when I get out of the Coast Guard is to do my coaching full time. I maintain somewhere between 11 and 15 clients right now, which is something that I can manage. Anything more than that is probably going to be too much for all the things that I'm doing. And then I would love to be able to coach, up to high school age kids in cross country, and that's it. Coach cross country, and then coach adult athletes online, and I'll be happy with that.
And I on the fortune cookie, I do have your website and then your Instagram. But just for the people listening in, and when I convert it over to podcast, how can people contact you or reach you?
Yeah, so I'm 4 Cycle Runner on Instagram. That's the number 4 Cycle Runner. And my website is fourcyclerunner.com. Also, Four Cycle Runner on Facebook and Instagram is where I do, I get most of my contacts, or where I spend most of my time when I'm on social media.
And I did want to just kind of, I always see you lifting weights, which is good. A lot of people don't cross train enough with strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
When did you get into weights, and was it like how does that happen? Me, I got into all these different things because I worked at a gym, and then I'm like, oh, okay, weight training, and then I started doing something else. I'm like, oh, this sport. So it kind of just fell into place. So how did you come across weight training?
Well, as a runner, you always told you need to do strength training, you need to do cross training to stay healthy, and I spent plenty of time going to a gym and trying to do things, or following a program that is for runners, every now and then, and stick with it for a while. But I was never really intentional about what I was doing, and I never stuck with what I was doing. And CrossFit was always this mythical thing that I wanted to try. Had some friends that did it. There's always this stigma with CrossFit, and so I told myself I always wanted to do it, but it was never convenient, and it was never in a spot that was near me. And I'm the type of person, if it's not convenient for me, if fitness isn't convenient, I'm not going to stick with it, especially if it's not something I'm used to doing. And when I moved out to West Virginia, I just happened to move like right down the road from a CrossFit gym that was opening up very shortly. So in January or February of 2017, I stepped foot into my first CrossFit gym in Barbersville, West Virginia, and it was the greatest place I've ever been. Like the community there, once you kind of get in and get over that overwhelming CrossFit stigma of, everyone throwing weights around and trying to go super fast and lift everything's. The community around CrossFit is a lot like the community around ultra running. They're really accepting for anybody to come in. They cheer you on if you're the last one still going. It's really cool. So, CrossFit was a way for me to kind of just show up and put in the work, and not really have to think about it. Now, after doing it for 4 years, I'm able to step back and know, understand why I'm there, and that reason why is I want it to benefit my running, and so I don't do all the things that are high risk, low reward for an endurance athlete. Things like overhead squats or heavy snatches. I don't. It's just very low benefit for why I'm there, so I just don't do them. I modify them. I scale them. I talk to the coach. The coach gives me things I can do, and it's all fine. It's not a big deal. You have to know why you're there.
Yeah, that's very important. Very specific training for whatever sport you're doing. Uh, and then, since you're not in West Virginia anymore, are you also still doing CrossFit, or?
Yeah, no, I am, and it's far less convenient for me now, but I like it enough that it's okay. So I drive about 25 minutes to get to the CrossFit gym that I go to, and but it's I don't get to go as often because of the drive, but it's definitely still worth it. It's going in there and suffering with the new community that I've found. It's still something that I enjoy doing, so I'm going to continue, and I see the benefit from it. I am much stronger runner because of CrossFit, and without a doubt, it's helped me go far down the trail. So I'm going to continue to do it.
And kind of like the last thing, just want to touch on is we didn't really talk too much about nutrition. Like, do you really
Yeah.
watch what you eat, or is that something that you kind of are always working on? That's probably one of the tougher things to deal with is nutrition, especially after a long run. You want to eat everything in sight.
Yeah, no, nutrition is one of the biggest things. I've always been the n equals one kind of person. So I'd, hear something, read something. see something and I would like to. I was like, all right, let's try it on myself and see how it works for me. And I started doing that when I lived out in North Carolina. And I just I was running marathons at the time. I was like, well, let's try this low carb thing. Let's see what that does to a runner. And it was miserable for the first like 2 to 3 weeks. I was eating less than 20 net carbs a day, and I couldn't move. But slowly but surely, I was able to adapt to a low carb diet and really performed well on a low carb diet. And since then, with research and more knowledge, I've moved away from a low carb diet to really just what I call clean eating. Like I, read labels and make almost all of my food, and just eat healthy. I still stay away from wheats and most grains, anything that's super processed. So I still am a relatively low carbohydrate diet, high fat diet, but I'll eat you know big big salads a couple of times a week. I'll have I'll have nachos when I go out. Something like corn chips. I'm not afraid of any food. I just know what works for me and what doesn't.
Yes, I, some people I think are so stressed out by not eating certain foods that
Hmm.
they cause more stress and probably doing worse than just having that little bite and relaxing about it and keep up with your training. And I want to thank you so much for coming on and just sharing your fitness journey. And
Yeah, of
uh, is there
course.
is there anything I missed that maybe you want to promote or anything coming up that you want to mention?
No, I mean, yeah, it's about the love of running. I really enjoy coming on and talking about fitness in general, but my fitness journey is mostly around running. But with running, I've found CrossFit. With running, I've found ways to properly fuel my body, and I've found ways to help people, maintain their fitness with strength training, maintain a healthy lifestyle with helping them with nutrition, and do some cool things while running as well. So that's ultimately why I coach, is to help others fuel their passion for running and find a way to do it for the rest of their life.
Yeah, to me, I'm really about longevity. I stress,
Yeah.
well, maybe you're not going to be running, but don't you want to be able to walk and not have to be like, oh, this hurts? A lot of
Yeah.
my friends that aren't in shape, they say, mentally, I feel young, but my body doesn't feel it. So it's the quality of life as you get older, and for me, my I play basketball with my son, so for me, it's important to stay competitive enough to play against them. As they
Yeah.
get older, they want to start proving themselves. So working out for me is like something that I really encourage, and that's why I bring on different coaches because I don't really care if it's me or anybody else. Like if some person gets like motivated or encouraged. It might not be me, it might be from you or a next guest that I have on because I just bring on a variety of from kettlebells to jujitsu to ultra runners. I just want some people to start working out. I saw some statistic where I think it said majority of the country will be obese by like 2030, and
Yeah.
I'm like it's if I have a platform, which I think Fireside for gave me this platform, and this is my opportunity to kind of just do my part. So I want to thank you so much for being on here once again. And if anybody wants to contact Josh, you can do so at forcyclerrunner.com or on his Instagram on the Fortune Cookie. And till next week, where I have all new guests. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, everyone listening in. This has been Athletic Definition, episode 26. Coach Ray, and everyone have a good night.
Thanks, Ray.